close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Let's go for a slow walk, not here, but far back in time. About 2,500 years back. Don't worry, no time machine is needed, just imagination and maybe a comfy pillow. It's the 5th century BCE. You find yourself standing at the edge of Athens, the most exciting city in the ancient world. The air is warm, the sunlight golden, and a soft breeze rolls in from the Aegean Sea. You can smell the faint salt in the air, mixed with the less glamorous smell of fish from the morning market. The streets are alive, not with cars or honking, but with the sound of sandals tapping against dusty stone paths. Merchants are calling out their best deals, fresh olives, fresh figs. Which honestly means the same thing every day because olives and figs are basically the Amazon Prime of ancient Athens. They're everywhere and everyone wants them. You pass a potter's stall, where a man shapes clay with his hands, spinning it gently into a jar. The clay looks like it's been touched by sunlight itself. Next to him, a baker is pulling warm loaves out of a stone oven. The smell makes you wish you'd skipped breakfast just for this moment. Children run by, laughing, chasing each other through the crowd. A dog wags its tail as it follows a boy with a piece of bread. And above all this hum of life, you hear the real soundtrack of Athens. People talking. Everyone here talks. About politics, poetry, war, love, and sometimes about absolutely nothing important at all. You walk deeper into the agora, the central marketplace and meeting place of the city. Imagine it as the ancient version of a cafe, a news channel, and a public park all rolled into one. Marble columns rise around you. Statues of gods and heroes keep watch over the people. There's a man reading a new play aloud, another drawing diagrams in the dirt to explain some clever idea. This is Athens, a place where every conversation feels like it might change the world. The sunlight is gentle now, slipping between the roofs and columns, falling on the faces of people debating about democracy. And yes, democracy is brand new here. It's still a bit messy, with rules and systems people are figuring out. But Athenians are proud that, unlike other cities, here the people actually have a voice. As you stroll, you notice how life here moves at its own rhythm. There's work, yes, but there's also time to think, to talk, to sit in the shade and watch the day pass. No one is in a rush, unless, of course, there's a festival. And Athens loves festivals. Music, dancing, theater. They celebrate gods, seasons, victories. Sometimes they probably just make up reasons to party. You can hear a lyre, a kind of small harp, being played somewhere nearby. The music floats over the crowd, soft and almost hypnotic. It mixes with the clinking of pottery, the calls of the vendors, and the occasional shout of someone trying to argue about who's the best poet this year. It's in this warm, noisy, beautiful chaos that we see him. At first, you might not notice him. There's nothing flashy about his clothes. In fact, they're plain, simple, even worn. He's barefoot, walking slowly, his eyes scanning the people more than the goods on display. His hair is a little wild, his beard thick and untamed. But there's something about his face, calm, curious, and somehow full of both seriousness and mischief at the same time. This is Socrates. Not yet the famous name you've heard of. Not yet the man who will change how people think about thinking. Right now, he's just Socrates. He stops to watch a young man boasting loudly about how much he knows. Socrates tilts his head, smiles faintly, and asks the young man a question, just one simple question. And somehow, within 2 minutes, the young man looks like he's not so sure about anything anymore. Socrates nods kindly, pats him on the shoulder, and walks on. You can almost feel the ease in his steps. He's not rushing to meet anyone important. He's not carrying gold or goods. His treasure is in the conversations he has and the thoughts they spark. Behind him, life in Athens flows on. A group of builders carries stone blocks for a new temple. Farmers unload baskets of grapes. A poet recites verses about the beauty of the sea. And the sea itself, just beyond the city walls, glitters like a giant piece of silver in the sun. If you listen carefully, you can hear the waves. If you listen even more carefully, you might hear the start of a question forming in Socrates' mind. The man walks past you, and for a moment, your eyes meet. It's strange, his gaze is calm, unhurried, almost as if he sees through the layers of noise, the markets, even time itself. You get the feeling he's not here just to live, but to understand what living really means. A pigeon flaps overhead, and the moment breaks. He turns down another street, and you're left standing in the heart of Athens, surrounded by a city that feels alive in every breath. The sun is warmer now. The breeze carries the sound of laughter, arguments, music, and the occasional donkey bray. In the distance, high above the city, you can see the marble columns of the Acropolis, white and shining under the bright blue sky. This is the Athens Socrates calls home, a city of beauty, ideas, and endless questions. And in the middle of it all is one man, walking slowly, listening carefully, and quietly changing the way people see the world, one conversation at a time. You might not know it yet, but this simple barefoot man will leave a mark on history far greater than the tallest temple or the loudest marketplace shout. And it all begins here, in the gentle hum of Athens, under the golden sun, with the sea whispering just beyond the walls. So take another deep breath. Let the warmth of the day sink into your skin. Listen to the voices, the footsteps, the music. Let the city wrap around you like a soft blanket of sound and light. The journey has only just begun. Chapter 2: The Early Life of a Curious Mind. If you were to step back in time, long before Socrates became the strange, barefoot man everyone in Athens knew, you'd find a boy growing up in a humble little home. No palaces, no golden statues, just a simple stone house, tucked into one of the city's quieter corners, with the scent of olive oil and bread drifting from the kitchen. Socrates was born around 470 BCE. His father, Socrates, was a stonemason and sculptor. That meant Socrates probably grew up surrounded by dust, chisels, and half-finished statues staring at him with blank marble eyes. His mother, Fineride, was a midwife. She helped bring new lives into the world, and maybe, just maybe, that influenced how Socrates saw his role later in life, not giving people answers, but helping them give birth to their own ideas. Now, when you think of philosophers, you might picture someone born into a family of scholars and book collectors. But young Socrates? Nope. He wasn't pampered with private tutors or shelves of fancy scrolls. Athens had a thriving culture, sure, but education for most kids back then was a mix of physical training, basic reading, and memorizing poetry. And Socrates, well, let's just say he wasn't exactly the star athlete. That's not to say he was weak. Ancient Athens took physical training seriously, but he had this habit of asking why, about everything. Why the sky is blue. Why people fight wars. Why some statues looked more alive than others. You know, the kind of questions that make adults sigh and say, "That's just how it is, Socrates." He probably spent hours watching his father shape stone, noticing how each small tap of the chisel changed the whole sculpture. Maybe that's where he learned patience. Or maybe he just learned that even rocks will eventually break if you poke them enough, a skill he'd later apply to people's beliefs. Socrates' childhood Athens was buzzing with energy. The Persian Wars had ended not too long ago, and Athens was growing into the cultural powerhouse of Greece. Temples were rising. Artists were everywhere. The city was a mix of serious politics and colorful street life, merchants shouting prices, children playing in dusty courtyards, and old men arguing about politics over cups of watered wine. Our young philosopher-to-be must have soaked it all in. He'd walk through the marketplace, known as the agora, listening more than speaking. That's one thing about Socrates. He liked to listen. Not because he was shy, but because he wanted to understand. He also had a few friends, though friends, for Socrates probably meant people who didn't mind him questioning everything they said. Imagine being 10 years old and having a kid in your group ask, "But what does winning really mean?" right after you scored in a game. That was him. In his teenage years, Socrates learned music, gymnastics, and literature, standard stuff for Athenian youth. He studied the works of poets like Homer and Hesiod, not just for the beauty of their verses, but to pick apart the meaning behind the words. If Homer wrote about a hero, Socrates would wonder, what makes someone truly heroic? Is it fighting? Or is it something else? And while he wasn't from a rich family, Athens wasn't a place where you had to be wealthy to think deeply. The city was alive with debates, plays, and stories. You could stand in the crowd at a theater festival and hear a play that made you laugh, cry, and question life all in one afternoon. You could watch politicians speak in the assembly and notice how they used words to persuade. Socrates did all that, and filed it away in his mind. One thing he didn't seem to care about much: his appearance. Even as a young man, he wasn't the handsome, chiseled type you'd expect in a city obsessed with beauty. He had a broad nose, big eyes, and a tendency to go barefoot. People later joked about how plain he looked, but it never seemed to bother him. If anything, he wore it like a badge, proof that wisdom mattered more than looks. By the time he reached adulthood, Socrates had the basics of Athenian education, a sharp mind, and a habit of questioning everything. But he wasn't yet the famous philosopher we think of today. For now, he was just another young man in Athens, working with his father on sculptures, talking with neighbors, and slowly, quietly, shaping the way he saw the world. Little did anyone know, the curious boy wandering the streets would one day change how people thought about truth, virtue, and even life itself. But that's still far ahead in our story. For now, picture Socrates as he was, barefoot, plain-looking, a head full of questions, and a mind that never stopped working, like a chisel tapping away at the marble of the world. Chapter 3: The Soldier and the Philosopher. When you picture Socrates, you probably imagine him standing in the marketplace, arguing about the meaning of justice while wearing the same old tunic for the 5th day in a row. But here's a fun twist: Socrates was also a soldier. The same barefoot, slightly odd-looking man who loved asking tricky questions also marched into battle with a spear and shield. In ancient Athens, serving in the military wasn't optional. If you were a citizen, you fought when your city needed you. And Athens needed plenty of soldiers. Socrates served as a hoplite, a heavily armed infantryman. This wasn't some fancy, stand-in-the-back job. Hoplites were frontline fighters, shoulder to shoulder in a phalanx formation, shields locked together, pushing against the enemy like a human wall. Now, imagine our philosopher in that lineup. No sandals because, well, he hated shoes. Armor that probably didn't shine like in the paintings, because Socrates wasn't the polish my breastplate type. But what he lacked in style, he made up for in toughness. We know from accounts by people like Plato and Xenophon that Socrates fought bravely in several campaigns. 3 big ones stand out: Potidaea, Delium, and Amphipolis. And here's where you see a side of Socrates you might not expect. He wasn't just brave, he was calm under pressure. At Potidaea, he reportedly saved a young soldier's life. This young man happened to be Alcibiades, who later became one of the most famous and infamous figures in Athens. Socrates carried Alcibiades to safety after he was wounded, refusing to leave him behind. Imagine that, the philosopher dragging a bleeding soldier through the chaos, probably still asking questions about the nature of courage while arrows whizzed past. Then there was Delium. This was a rough battle against the Boeotians, and Athens lost badly. Most people panicked and ran. Not Socrates. Witnesses said he walked away slowly, shield in hand, looking so confident that the enemy didn't dare attack him. That's the thing about Socrates. Whether in the marketplace or on the battlefield, he stayed calm. And calm people, even in war, are a little scary. It's tempting to think Socrates' military years didn't influence his philosophy, but they probably did. Fighting in close quarters teaches you things. About fear, about loyalty, about how quickly life can change. Maybe that's why later, when he talked about courage, he didn't make it sound like some Hollywood hero moment. For him, courage was steady, thoughtful, like holding your ground in the middle of chaos, not charging in with blind rage. And yes, between battles, Socrates was still very much Socrates. His fellow soldiers would recall him standing in the cold, lost in thought, not moving for hours. One story says he once stood in the same spot thinking for an entire day and night. While other men huddled by the fire, Socrates was just processing life, probably deciding whether courage was a kind of wisdom or a kind of madness. But the most striking thing? He didn't brag about any of this. If you asked him about his bravery, he'd probably shrug and change the subject to whether bravery even exists without knowledge. To him, being a soldier wasn't about glory, it was just part of being a citizen of Athens. When the wars ended and Socrates returned to civilian life, he didn't have a chest full of medals or a pile of gold. What he brought back was something harder to see but more valuable. A deep understanding that life is fragile, that fear can be mastered, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply stand your ground. So, when you later hear about Socrates standing in court, facing a death sentence without flinching, remember this. He'd already stood his ground on the battlefield, surrounded by spears and arrows. For him, philosophy and courage weren't separate. They were the same thing, living with a calm mind, no matter what's in front of you. Chapter 4, Athens in its Golden Age. Close your eyes for a moment. Well, maybe don't actually close them if you're doing something important, but imagine this. It's the middle of the 5th century BCE, and Athens is thriving. This is the city at its brightest, its proudest. The wars are over, for now. The navy rules the Aegean, and the city has money pouring in from its allies. If ancient Greece were a playlist, this would be Athens' #1 hit. The streets hum with life. Marble temples are going up, artists are chiseling statues so perfect they still amaze us today, and poets are competing to see who can make the audience cry or laugh the hardest. This is the time of Pericles, the famous statesman, who has a vision of Athens not just as a strong city, but as the cultural capital of the world. Picture the Parthenon under construction. Workers hauling giant blocks of marble, the white stone gleaming in the sunlight. The smell of fresh-cut wood from scaffolding, the sound of hammers echoing against stone. It's not just a building, it's a statement. We are Athens, and we know how to make an entrance. The Agora, the city's bustling marketplace, is a whole world of its own. Here, you can buy olives, fine pottery, or a handful of figs so sweet they could almost pass as dessert today. Merchants call out their deals in loud voices, kids weave between stalls, and somewhere in the crowd, philosophers argue about whether the universe is made of water, fire, or something called infinite stuff. Art is everywhere. Painters are perfecting techniques to make flat walls look alive. Playwrights like Sophocles and Euripides are bringing drama to life on the stage. Big themes, big emotions, and yes, probably more shouting than whispering. In the theaters carved into hillsides, thousands gather to watch plays about gods, heroes, and messy human mistakes. And it's not just the arts. Athens is also the birthplace of democracy, well, their version of it, anyway. Citizens, not women, slaves, or foreigners of course, gather to debate and vote on laws. If you were an Athenian citizen back then, you could stand up in the assembly and shout your opinion about taxes or war strategy. And people would actually listen. This golden age also means a golden attitude. Athenians walk with a certain confidence. They believe their city is special, and honestly, they're not wrong. It's a place buzzing with new ideas about politics, science, architecture, and of course, philosophy. Now, imagine Socrates walking through all this. He's not building temples, he's not writing plays, and he's definitely not selling figs. But he's watching. Always watching. In this perfect storm of culture and ambition, Socrates is quietly preparing to do something different. Not create statues or write epic poems, but to shape the way people think. In a city obsessed with beauty and success, Socrates will become famous for ignoring both. While others chase gold or fame, he's about to start chasing truth, and asking so many questions that Athens might eventually wish they'd never answered him. But that's for later. Right now, Athens is glowing, the air is warm, and the sound of a lyre drifts through the streets. This is the stage where our story will truly unfold. Chapter 5, The Odd Figure in the Marketplace. Let's stroll back into the Agora for a moment, the heart of Athens, where everything happens. It's noisy, colorful, and a little chaotic. People are haggling over prices, shouting across stalls, waving their hands like their arms are doing half the talking. It's the kind of place where you could hear the latest political gossip, pick up fresh bread, and accidentally get roped into an argument about whether justice is real, all before lunch. And there he is. Socrates. At first glance, you might not think much of him. He's not wearing fine robes or expensive sandals. In fact, he's barefoot. Always barefoot. His clothes? Simple, almost shabby. Definitely not the fashion of the day. His hair and beard? Let's just say, no one would accuse him of spending too much time at the barber's. In a city full of athletic, sculpted bodies, Socrates has more of a "I've been thinking too hard to work out" kind of build. But there's something about him. He moves slowly, not because he's lazy, but because he's looking. Really looking. His eyes scan the crowd like he's searching for something, though it's not olives or figs, he's looking for a good conversation. And when Socrates finds you, you're not just chatting. You're about to go on a mental roller coaster. He's got this habit. Instead of telling you what he thinks, he asks questions. And then more questions. And then more, until you're wondering if you actually know anything at all. Some people love it. They feel like they're learning. Others? Well, let's just say Socrates has a reputation for making people uncomfortable. Not in a bad way, just in a "my brain feels like it did push-ups" kind of way. Imagine him leaning on a market stall, talking to a young man who's bragging about being the wisest in Athens. Socrates, with a little smile, starts asking him what wisdom really is. 10 minutes later, the young man is staring at the ground, mumbling something about not being so sure anymore. He doesn't sell anything. He doesn't run for office. He doesn't write speeches or books. And listens. And somehow, he becomes one of the most famous people in Athens without really trying. The merchants know him. The kids in the marketplace know him. Even the politicians know him, and some of them avoid him, because they know he'll ask the kind of questions they can't answer without tripping over their own words. He's like that one friend who's always calm, a little odd, but somehow makes you see the world differently after just a short chat. Only difference is, Socrates is doing this in the middle of the most important city in the world at its peak. And here's the twist. In a city that values wealth, beauty, and prestige, this barefoot man in plain clothes is quietly becoming one of the most influential voices around. He's not shouting for attention. He's pulling people in with curiosity, with honesty, with the sheer force of making them think. You might not notice him at first in the chaos of the agora, but once you do, you can't forget him. Chapter 6: The Art of Asking Questions. Now, here's where Socrates really stands out from everyone else in Athens, not because he's strong, rich, or politically powerful, but because of the way he talks. Or, more specifically, the way he asks. See, most people in the agora like to talk about what they know. Politicians give speeches, poets recite verses, merchants brag about their goods. But Socrates? He's not interested in telling you how smart he is. He's interested in finding out what you think, and then helping you realize whether what you think actually makes sense. It's a sneaky kind of genius. He starts off easy. "What is courage?" you might hear him ask. And you, feeling pretty confident, say something like, "Well, courage is fighting bravely in battle." He nods. Interesting. But is someone who fights without knowing what they're doing still courageous? Or is that just recklessness? Now you're thinking, wait. You try again. Courage is standing up for what's right. Socrates tilts his head. Even if what you think is right turns out to be wrong? And suddenly your brain is doing gymnastics. You came into this conversation sure you had the answer, but 5 minutes later, you're wondering if you actually know what courage is at all. This style of questioning has a name now. We call it the Socratic method. Back then, it didn't have a fancy title. It was just Socrates being Socrates. The idea is simple. Keep asking questions until you've dug so deep that you either find the truth or discover that you have to keep searching. And Socrates does this with everyone. Rich, poor, young, old, it doesn't matter. He believes wisdom isn't about having all the answers, but about recognizing when you don't know something. That's his whole philosophy. I know that I know nothing. It sounds strange at first, but it's actually kind of brilliant. The moment you admit you don't know everything, your mind becomes open enough to actually learn. Some people love this process. They feel like Socrates is opening doors in their mind they didn't know existed. Others? Well, some think he's just being difficult on purpose. They leave the conversation feeling a bit frustrated, like they were winning a game and Socrates changed the rules halfway through. The thing is, Socrates doesn't care about winning arguments. He's not trying to embarrass anyone. He just wants people to think deeply, to peel back the layers of their ideas and see what's really underneath. It's like he's less of a teacher and more of a guide, walking beside you while you explore your own thoughts. Picture him in the marketplace again. There's a small crowd gathered, leaning in to hear this back and forth. It's not loud or aggressive. Socrates isn't shouting. He's calm, almost gentle, but his questions cut through confusion like a sharp knife. Even those just listening in start to rethink things they were sure they knew. This is the art of asking questions. It's not about catching someone in a gotcha moment. It's about pushing the conversation to a point where real understanding can happen. And Socrates, well, he's the master of it. The funny thing is, Socrates never writes any of this down. No books, no essays. If you want to know what he teaches, you have to hear it from him, or from one of his students later. And maybe that's the magic of it. His lessons aren't frozen on a page. They're alive, happening in the moment, shaped by whoever he's talking to. By the time you finish talking with him, you might not have the answers you came looking for. But you'll walk away with something even better, the urge to keep asking questions yourself. And that, to Socrates, is the beginning of wisdom. Chapter 7. The Friends and Followers. Socrates isn't a one-man show. Sure, he spends a lot of time wandering around Athens talking to strangers, but he also has a little circle of people who genuinely get him, or at least they try to. Let's start with a name you've probably heard before, Plato. Back then, he's just a young man from a wealthy family. He could be spending his time at fancy dinner parties, showing off his athletic skills, or maybe even running for political office. But nope, he's hanging out with this barefoot philosopher in the marketplace, soaking up every word. Plato's like the friend who always takes notes when the teacher's talking, except in this case, the teacher is Socrates, and the notes will eventually become some of the most famous philosophical works in history. Then there's Xenophon, another student. He's more of a soldier and adventurer type. If Plato is the bookish one, Xenophon's the action guy, the one who'll tell the story later with dramatic details and maybe a few heroic embellishments. His writings about Socrates are less deep philosophical argument and more here's what the man was like in real life. Which is great because we get two very different perspectives. You'll also find Antisthenes, who will later go on to found the Cynic school of philosophy, the live simply, reject luxury crowd. Spending time with Socrates seems to convince him that a life chasing riches is basically a waste of time. And then there's Alcibiades. Oh boy. Alcibiades is like that one friend who's charming, handsome, ridiculously smart, but also constantly getting into trouble. He's a politician, a general, a bit of a wild card. He admires Socrates deeply, but the two of them couldn't be more different. Socrates is calm and self-disciplined. Alcibiades is impulsive and ambitious. Their friendship is complicated, full of admiration, arguments, and probably a lot of "I told you so" moments from Socrates. The thing about Socrates' friends and followers is that they're not just mindless fans. They debate him, challenge him, and sometimes walk away confused. But they keep coming back because talking to him is like mental exercise. Tough, sometimes exhausting, but you always feel stronger afterward. When they gather together, it's not in some formal classroom. There's no podium, no chalkboard, no schedule. It might be in the marketplace, under the shade of a tree, or even at a dinner party. Imagine it. Cups of wine being passed around, food on the table, laughter in the background, and Socrates in the middle, steering the conversation from "what's your favorite cheese?" to "but what is goodness?" without anyone even realizing how they got there. For these friends, following Socrates isn't about memorizing lessons, it's about living them. They see how he interacts with the city, how he handles criticism, how he stays calm when others lose their temper. It's philosophy not as an abstract subject, but as a way of life. And here's the interesting part. These friendships will become the reason we even know about Socrates today. He never writes anything down, but his students, especially Plato, will preserve his ideas. Without them, Socrates might have been just another name lost to history. Instead, through their eyes, we get a vivid, human picture of him. The man, the teacher, the relentless question-asker. So as the sun sets over Athens and the little group drifts off, some to write, some to fight, some to wander, we're left with this warm image. Socrates, surrounded by people from all walks of life, connected not by wealth or status, but by a shared hunger for truth. Chapter 8. The Trouble with Socrates. Up until now, Socrates has been strolling through Athens, minding his own business. Well, actually, minding everyone else's business. That's kind of the issue. See, most people don't appreciate being asked deep, uncomfortable questions about their lives in the middle of buying figs or discussing who has the best olive oil in town. It's like if someone walked up to you in a cafe, sat down and said, "Yes, your latte looks nice, but what is the meaning of justice?" Some folks would love it. Most would just want to sip their coffee in peace. And Socrates? He doesn't care who you are, politician, poet, blacksmith, merchant, everyone's fair game. He'll gently, or not so gently, expose flaws in your reasoning until you're left blinking and saying, "Wait, maybe I don't know what I thought I knew." This habit earns him a mixed reputation. Some see him as a wise and moral man, a kind of public treasure. Others think he's a troublemaker who enjoys making people look foolish. And honestly, from the outside, it's easy to see why. Imagine you're a respected Athenian, known for your intelligence, and along comes Socrates, asking a chain of questions that ends with you admitting you're not as wise as you thought. That's a bruise to the ego. Things really start to heat up because Athens, at this time, is not exactly the most stable place. Wars with Sparta, political upheavals, shifting leadership, it's a tense atmosphere. And here's Socrates in the middle of it all, refusing to take sides, refusing to flatter anyone, and refusing to play politics. That makes him suspicious to some people. It doesn't help that a few of his followers, remember Alcibiades, get themselves into political scandals. People start connecting dots that maybe shouldn't be connected. If Alcibiades did something bad, and he was friends with Socrates, well, maybe Socrates is dangerous too. It's guilt by association, and it sticks in people's minds. Also, Socrates has this habit of making the youth of Athens think. Not memorize, not obey, think. He encourages them to question authority, to look beyond tradition, to demand clear answers. And while that sounds great in a modern classroom, in ancient Athens, it can feel threatening. Older generations start whispering that he's corrupting young minds, turning them against the city's traditions. The thing is, Socrates isn't trying to burn the system down. He just believes that a life without examining your own beliefs isn't worth living. He's not trying to destroy Athens. He's trying to make it better, one awkward conversation at a time. But nuance doesn't always survive in politics. Rumors grow faster than olive trees. So, slowly, the warm image of the wise, barefoot philosopher starts to shift in the public's mind. To some, he's still the lovable, eccentric truth-teller. To others, he's a dangerous influence, a man who mocks the gods, undermines tradition, and fills young people's heads with unsettling ideas. And Socrates? He doesn't change a thing. He keeps walking the streets, asking questions, smiling in that way that says, "I know you're avoiding the real answer." By now, the tension is quietly building, like a storm far out at sea. Most Athenians can still ignore it, but the waves are coming closer. And somewhere, in the chatter of the city, you can almost hear it, the first quiet murmurs that one day, this man will be put on trial. Chapter 9. The Trial of Socrates. The year is 399 BCE, and the streets of Athens are buzzing. But this isn't the usual market chatter about fish prices or who's putting on a new play. No, there's bigger news. Socrates, the barefoot philosopher, is going on trial. Now, trials in Athens aren't like today's formal courtrooms with judges in robes. Picture a big gathering of citizens, hundreds of them, sitting together, ready to listen, judge, and vote. It's more like a massive town meeting where everyone thinks they know the truth. And the mood? A mix of curiosity, suspicion, and maybe a bit of excitement. The charges? They're serious. Socrates is accused of corrupting the youth, teaching them to question authority and tradition, and of impiety, which basically means disrespecting the gods of Athens. For a deeply religious city, that's no small accusation. People say he introduces new divinities and ignores the old ones. Of course, Socrates sees it differently. He's not rejecting the gods, he's just following his inner voice. a divine sign he believes guides him. But in the heat of public opinion, that sounds like dangerous nonsense to some. Let's pause for a moment and imagine Socrates walking into the courtroom. He's 70 years old now, still barefoot, still calm. No fancy clothes, no rehearsed speech. Just him, with his sharp mind and that little smile that suggests he's already thinking about the questions he'll ask. And here's the thing. Socrates could have played it safe. He could have begged for mercy, tried to win sympathy, or promised to stop asking so many difficult questions. But that's not who he is. When he speaks, it's not a defense in the usual sense, it's a challenge. He says he's doing the gods' work, helping Athens by making people think. He even compares himself to a gadfly, a little annoying insect that keeps a lazy horse awake. The horse is Athens, and without him, it would just drift into complacency. The jury is not amused. Some admire his courage, others see it as arrogance. And when Socrates suggests that instead of punishing him, Athens should reward him with free meals for life at the public dining hall, well, that does not help his case. Voting time comes. In Athens, trials end with a public vote. By a narrow margin, Socrates is found guilty. Now comes the penalty phase, where both sides propose a punishment. His accusers want death. Socrates, in true Socratic style, jokes about being given a hero's reward. Finally, he half-seriously suggests paying a fine, but it's too late. The mood is against him. The vote is taken. Death by drinking poison hemlock. The sentence is final. Still, Socrates doesn't panic. No crying, no anger. Just calm acceptance. He says death doesn't scare him. It's either a peaceful nothingness or a journey to meet the souls of the dead. Either way, he's fine with it. He even warns Athens that silencing him won't silence the search for truth. Others will come, asking the same questions. Outside, the city goes on as usual. Merchants sell olives, children play, the sea breeze drifts in from the harbor. But for those who know Socrates, there's a heaviness in the air. The man who spent decades challenging Athens to live up to its ideals now faces his last days. And somewhere, maybe in a quiet street corner or shaded courtyard, one of his young followers is thinking, if this is what happens to a man for speaking the truth, what will happen to the rest of us? The trial is over. The sentence is set. The clock is ticking. Chapter 10. The Last Days in Prison. Socrates is now in prison. The walls are cold, made of rough stone, damp in some corners, with the faint smell of the Athenian city drifting in through the small barred windows. Outside, life goes on as usual, merchants calling their wares, children laughing, the distant clatter of sandals against the stone streets. But inside, time feels slower, almost suspended. He doesn't complain. Never has, never will. He spends his days calmly, talking quietly with friends who come to visit. Plato, Crito, and a few others sit by his side, listening to his words as though each one is a tiny spark of light in the dim room. Socrates talks about philosophy, of course, but also about life and death. He smiles gently, the kind of smile that says, I've lived fully, and I am ready for what comes next. At first, there's discussion about escape. Crito, his devoted friend, offers a plan. They could bribe the guards, slip past the city walls, and Socrates could live in exile. But Socrates shakes his head. He doesn't want to betray his principles. He believes in living rightly, and running away would be the opposite. A good man should never do wrong, even if wrong is done to him, he says calmly. So he remains, walking the narrow cell like he's pacing through a quiet garden. He speaks of courage, justice, and the soul, continuing to teach his friends even as the end draws near. There's a softness in his voice, like he's preparing them more for life than for death. He doesn't dwell on fear or anger. Instead, he talks about the afterlife in a way that's almost peaceful. Death, he explains, is either like a long, dreamless sleep, completely calm and restful, or a chance to meet the great souls of the past. Either way, there's no need to fear it. Friends bring him small comforts, a loaf of bread, a simple cup of wine. They sit in silence for long stretches, letting the quiet of the prison wrap around them. It's not sad, it's reflective, almost meditative. You can imagine the faint sunlight slipping through the bars, landing softly on the floor, tracing patterns on the walls. Socrates even injects a little humor. He teases his friends gently, asks them to stay sharp with their questions, reminds them not to take life, or themselves, too seriously. In this simple cell, stripped of all grandeur, his presence feels calm, grounded, and oddly uplifting. He talks about duty, not only to the gods but to oneself. He reminds his followers that a life examined is a life worth living. His lessons are gentle yet firm, leaving a lasting impression. Seek truth, question everything, and live with integrity. As the day of his execution approaches, Socrates remains serene. He eats, he speaks, he laughs softly. Athens is alive outside, with the sounds of daily life. A city bustling, unaware that one of its greatest minds is preparing to depart. And in those last days, the lesson becomes clear. Even facing the end, one can remain calm, thoughtful, and humane. Socrates teaches not through speeches or scrolls, but by example. A life of wisdom is not about escaping fear or hardship, but moving through them with clarity, courage, and a gentle heart. The hours pass quietly, like the slow ripple of the Aegean Sea against the shore. And somewhere, in the minds of those who listen, his teachings settle softly, ready to ripple outward into the future. Chapter 11. The Final Moments, expanded. The day has come. Socrates sits calmly in his cell, surrounded by his closest friends. The soft light of the Athenian morning spills through the barred windows, painting faint golden stripes on the stone floor. The walls, cold and rough, are softened by the quiet warmth of the sunlight. Outside, Athens moves on as usual, merchants calling their wares, children laughing, sandals clattering on stone, but inside, time feels slow, almost sacred. Socrates eats a simple breakfast, a bit of bread and a small piece of cheese. He chews slowly, savoring each bite, not out of hunger but as if tasting the ordinary pleasures of life one last time. There's no fear in his eyes, only clarity, a serene focus. Plato, Crito, and a few others sit nearby, holding small cups of water and observing him with a mixture of awe and sorrow. Their hearts are heavy, but Socrates' calmness steadies them. Soon, the guards bring the cup of hemlock. It's a small vessel, simple, unadorned, but it carries the weight of eternity. Socrates lifts it slowly, examining the dark liquid almost like a scholar studying an ancient text. Then, with the same gentle humor he always carries, he drinks. His friends watch in silence, holding their breath, their eyes wide. He doesn't flinch, he doesn't panic. To him, this is simply another step in life's journey, no different from walking through the marketplace or engaging in a discussion about virtue. As the poison begins its slow work, Socrates speaks to his friends. His voice is soft but steady, filled with warmth. He reminds them to care for their souls, to continue questioning, to seek truth and understanding. He even teases them gently, pointing out how worried they look and saying, "Do not waste this moment with tears, there is still much to ponder." His calm demeanor soothes the room, even as the reality of death hangs in the air. He moves slowly, his body responding naturally to the poison, yet his mind remains sharp, alert, and engaged. He speaks of courage, not the kind of bravery displayed in battle, but the quiet, steadfast courage of a soul aligned with truth. He reassures them that death is not the enemy. It may be a long, dreamless sleep, a peaceful release, or a journey to meet the souls of those who lived before. Either way, it is not to be feared, only understood. The friends listen intently, absorbing every word. Plato leans closer, scribbling mental notes, imagining the stories he will tell later. Crito, filled with a mix of grief and admiration, struggles to find words to comfort him. Socrates smiles softly, his gaze calm and unwavering, as if reassuring them silently that all will be well. He pauses to reflect on a simple truth. Life is measured not by its length but by the depth of thought and care in one's actions. A life without examining oneself, he says, is like a lamp without oil. It may shine for a moment, but it cannot illuminate the world. His words float gently in the air, mingling with the distant sounds of Athens outside, the laughter of children, the call of a merchant, the soft whisper of the wind through the city streets. Time stretches. Socrates' breathing slows, each inhale and exhale a measured rhythm. The poison works gradually, yet there is no panic, no fear, only a serene acceptance. He reaches out to touch his friend's hands lightly, conveying comfort and gratitude. "Remember, my friends," he whispers, "seek virtue above all, and the rest will follow." Eventually he grows still. The room is quiet, save for the soft murmur of Athens outside. Socrates' body rests, but his presence, his teachings, and his spirit linger in the hearts of those who loved him. Plato and the others sit in silence, letting the calm wash over them, absorbing the profound lessons of a life lived fully, thoughtfully, and courageously. Outside, the city continues its bustling rhythm. The sun moves slowly across the sky, casting long, gentle shadows on the streets and buildings. For those who knew him, the world feels slightly different, more thoughtful, more reflective. They've witnessed the end of a life lived with integrity, humor, and calm acceptance. Socrates' departure is quiet yet monumental, a final act of wisdom and serenity that will echo through time. In that quiet room, the legacy begins. Not with grand speeches or monuments, but with the gentle imprint of a man who asked questions instead of giving answers, who valued truth over comfort, and who faced the end with dignity. His example becomes a guide, a blueprint for wisdom, teaching generations to come how to live a life of thoughtful inquiry, courage, and calm presence. And so, as the soft light fades and shadows lengthen, Athens continues around them, unaware of the philosophical seed that has just been planted. A man has left this world, but his questions, his spirit, and his quiet strength remain, ready to inspire anyone willing to listen, reflect, and walk the path of wisdom. Chapter 12: The Legacy of Socrates. After Socrates' calm departure from the world, Athens returned to its usual rhythm. Merchants in the agora called out their wares, children ran through narrow streets laughing, and the soft hum of daily life filled the air. To most Athenians, the philosopher's death might have seemed like the end of an era, a quiet footnote in the city's history. But for those who had truly listened to him, who had walked with him through long conversations and pondered the questions he posed, his absence was a profound presence, a silent, guiding force that lingered in every thoughtful mind. The first and most notable torchbearer of Socrates' philosophy was Plato, his devoted student. Plato, still young when Socrates died, was determined not to let the ideas and lessons of his teacher fade into memory. He began recording Socrates' dialogues, the discussions that had once flowed freely in the marketplace, the shade of olive trees, and the quiet corners of private homes. Plato transformed these lively conversations into written works, texts that would echo across centuries. Plato's dialogues are not rigid philosophical treatises, they are living conversations. Socrates speaks within them, gently guiding, questioning, and occasionally teasing. The charm lies in their subtlety. You can almost imagine Socrates' barefoot figure leaning casually, the faint smirk on his face as he nudges his interlocutors toward clarity. By writing these dialogues, Plato captured more than ideas. He captured the very spirit of Socrates, curious, calm, relentless, and humane. One of the most famous dialogues, The Republic, explores justice, morality, and the ideal society. Although Plato expands on Socrates' teachings, the heart of it is unmistakably Socratic. The pursuit of truth through careful questioning, the belief that a life examined is a life worth living, and the importance of virtue above material gain. Readers centuries later, from scholars to casual thinkers, can trace the line back to the quiet streets of Athens, where Socrates walked and asked questions that unsettled yet enlightened. But Plato was not the only one to carry Socrates' flame. Xenophon, another student, wrote accounts that were more practical, less polished, but equally valuable. His works, like memorabilia, offer glimpses into Socrates' daily life, his character, and the gentle humor he often displayed. Xenophon's descriptions show a man who cared deeply for people, who believed in the power of dialogue not merely as an intellectual exercise but as a way to nurture the soul. Through Xenophon, we see Socrates not just as a thinker, but as a living, breathing human being, accessible, patient, and profoundly wise. Through the writings of Plato and Xenophon, Socrates' ideas began to influence minds far beyond Athens. Philosophers in distant lands, kings and leaders, students and scribes, many found inspiration in the calm, reflective approach Socrates modeled. His method of questioning became a standard tool in philosophy and education. Today, we call it the Socratic method, a way of teaching and learning through asking questions, challenging assumptions, and nurturing critical thinking. Its simplicity and effectiveness continue to resonate, from classrooms to boardrooms, centuries after his death. Socrates' legacy is not only in words but in the spirit of inquiry he embodied. He showed that wisdom is not about knowing everything, but about recognizing what we do not know. This humility, coupled with relentless curiosity, inspired countless thinkers to question assumptions, explore ideas deeply, and pursue virtue as the guiding principle of life. Socrates taught that knowledge without reflection is empty, that morality is rooted in reason, and that courage and integrity are far more valuable than fame or wealth. Interestingly, Socrates also left a model for personal conduct that transcends philosophy. His calm approach to life, even in the face of death, serves as a guide for living peacefully amid uncertainty. He demonstrates that fear is often a product of misunderstanding and that acceptance, reflection, and a gentle mind can transform even the most difficult circumstances into lessons for growth. His life, lived with simplicity, humor, and thoughtfulness, offers a blueprint for serenity, a legacy not just for philosophers, but for anyone seeking a calmer, more meaningful existence. Socrates' influence spread not just through direct disciples but also indirectly. His insistence on critical thinking and questioning authority laid the groundwork for schools of thought that followed. The Cynics, inspired in part by Antisthenes, embraced simplicity and self-discipline. The Stoics, influenced indirectly through Socratic principles, developed a philosophy emphasizing rationality, inner peace, and resilience. Even in modern education, the Socratic method remains a cornerstone of critical thinking, fostering dialogue and reflection in students around the world. One of the most profound aspects of Socrates' legacy is how it challenged societies to reflect on justice and ethics. By daring to question powerful leaders, conventional beliefs, and the moral assumptions of his time, Socrates set a precedent for speaking truth to power. His life became a lesson in integrity, showing that one could stand firm in principles, even when facing societal disapproval or death. This courage inspired thinkers, activists, and reformers for centuries, demonstrating the enduring power of a life committed to truth. Even beyond philosophy, Socrates' story captures the human imagination. Artists, writers, and storytellers have depicted his calm acceptance of death, his witty dialogues, and his gentle guidance of others. From the frescoes of ancient schools to modern films, Socrates is celebrated as the embodiment of wisdom and moral courage. He has become more than a man. He is a symbol of the transformative power of thought, reflection, and ethical living. The lessons of Socrates also remind us of the importance of community in learning. He surrounded himself with friends and followers, not to impose knowledge, but to engage, explore, and reflect together. Philosophy, in his view, is not solitary. It is lived, shared, and nurtured through dialogue. This principle continues to shape educational approaches, from study groups to seminars, encouraging collaborative exploration and mutual growth. And then there's the humor. Socrates knew that life, even serious philosophy, benefits from lightness. His gentle teasing, his witty observations, and his ability to find insight in the mundane remind us that wisdom need not be heavy or grim. This approach, blending seriousness with warmth, reflection with humor, is part of why his teachings endure. They are human, relatable, and deeply comforting. Socrates' legacy is also a lesson in resilience. Despite being condemned and executed, his ideas refused to die. They traveled through Plato, Xenophon, and countless others, spreading across time and geography. His life teaches that true influence comes not from force or fear, but from the integrity, thoughtfulness, and courage with which one lives. By staying true to his principles, Socrates ensured that the pursuit of wisdom would echo long after his physical presence vanished. Even today, in the quiet moments of reflection, perhaps while reading, walking, or lying down to sleep, one can feel the soft, enduring presence of Socrates' teachings. The gentle encouragement to question, to think, to live ethically, and to find calm amid chaos continues to guide countless minds. His legacy is both philosophical and human, reminding us that the path to understanding is ongoing, serene, and deeply rewarding. In the end, Socrates teaches that a life well lived is measured not by accolades or power, but by curiosity, reflection, and integrity. He invites us to listen carefully, to question thoughtfully, and to move gently through the world, leaving a quiet but lasting impact. In this sense, his legacy is not just in ancient texts or philosophical schools. It lives in the calm, thoughtful, and curious hearts of anyone willing to pause, reflect, and embrace the search for truth. And so, from the streets of ancient Athens to classrooms, conversations, and quiet reflections across the world, the voice of Socrates continues. It whispers softly to anyone who will hear, ask, seek, reflect, and live with integrity. His presence is felt in questions more than answers, in gentle guidance more than lectures, and in the quiet understanding that wisdom is not a destination but a lifelong journey. Socrates may have left this world over 2 millennia ago, but his ideas remain alive. They drift like soft waves across the sea of human thought, touching minds, inspiring reflection, and offering calm in a turbulent world. His legacy is timeless, a gentle reminder that truth, virtue, and thoughtful living are treasures that no force can take away. Chapter 13: Socrates in Modern Thought. Even more than 2,000 years after his quiet walks through Athens, Socrates continues to whisper into the minds of thinkers, dreamers, and everyday people seeking clarity. His legacy, first carried forward by Plato and Xenophon, has traveled across time, influencing countless aspects of modern thought, from philosophy and education to politics and daily reflection. The world has changed tremendously since ancient Athens, but the essence of Socratic wisdom, calm questioning, reflection, and pursuit of virtue remains timeless. Consider the modern classroom. Today, teachers often use the Socratic method, a practice of asking carefully guided questions to encourage deep thinking rather than memorization. A teacher may ask, "What is justice?" or "How should we live?" and patiently lead students through a chain of reasoning, helping them uncover contradictions, refine their ideas, and reflect on their beliefs. This approach nurtures critical thinking, curiosity, and clarity, just as Socrates did centuries ago under the olive trees or in the bustling marketplace. There is a quiet, almost meditative rhythm in this style of learning. Each question flows naturally into the next, like gentle waves touching the shore. Students, while sometimes frustrated at first, often emerge more aware, more thoughtful, and more confident in exploring ideas on their own. In philosophy, Socrates' influence is equally profound. Modern thinkers, from Immanuel Kant to Jean-Paul Sartre, have wrestled with questions that echo Socratic inquiry: the nature of morality, the pursuit of virtue, and the meaning of life. Even when philosophers disagree, Socrates' approach is evident: rigorous questioning, careful reasoning, and the refusal to accept easy answers. His calm, reflective manner serves as a reminder that philosophy is not just a collection of facts. It is a lived practice, a way of engaging with the world thoughtfully and ethically. Socrates also shaped modern ideas about ethics and personal integrity. Many contemporary discussions on morality, justice, and leadership trace their roots to Socratic principles. He showed that living rightly, even under pressure, is more important than personal gain or public approval. Political thinkers, educators, and reformers have often cited Socratic courage, the willingness to stand by one's convictions, as an example to follow. In societies that value freedom of thought and moral responsibility, Socrates' calm insistence on questioning authority and pursuing truth resonates strongly, reminding us that principles matter more than convenience or comfort. Even psychology and therapy, surprisingly, bear traces of Socratic influence. Socratic questioning is used in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, to help patients examine distorted thinking patterns, challenge assumptions, and develop healthier perspectives. A therapist might gently ask, "What evidence do you have for that belief?" Or, Could there be another way to see this situation? This soft, reflective questioning mirrors Socrates' approach to guiding his friends and followers, creating space for insight, calm reflection, and personal growth. The method encourages patience, self-awareness, and a quiet confidence in facing life's challenges, echoes of Socrates' serene presence even in modern therapy rooms. In politics, Socratic influence emerges in subtle ways. Leaders, activists, and writers who question power structures, challenge injustice, or advocate for moral responsibility often walk in Socrates' footsteps. The idea that citizens should think critically, rather than blindly follow authority, is foundational to modern democratic societies. Socrates' calm courage and refusal to pander to popular opinion serve as a timeless reminder that integrity and reason should guide decisions, even when they are unpopular or risky. Socrates' presence also lingers in literature and the arts. Writers have drawn on his life, teachings, and trial to explore human nature, morality, and the pursuit of knowledge. From philosophical novels to plays, his quiet, thoughtful character inspires scenes of reflection, dialogue, and subtle humor. Artists capture the gentle wisdom in his gaze, the serene poise in his stance, and the calm strength that defined his final moments. In this way, Socrates continues to enter our imagination, guiding us toward reflection and understanding. Even everyday life carries traces of Socratic influence. Anyone who pauses to ask themselves meaningful questions, am I living rightly? Am I being honest with myself? What is truly important? Is practicing a form of Socratic inquiry. His approach encourages patience, mindfulness, and calm reflection, qualities often lost in our fast-paced world. Socrates' example shows that wisdom is not about knowing everything. It is about being willing to explore, to question, and to grow slowly, steadily, and thoughtfully. The serenity with which Socrates lived and faced death also teaches modern readers an important lesson about fear, mortality, and acceptance. In a world where uncertainty is constant and the pressures of life often weigh heavily, Socratic calm provides a model. He reminds us that we cannot control everything, but we can control our own reasoning, our choices, and our integrity. There is comfort in this realization. Even amid challenges or endings, a thoughtful mind can remain peaceful and centered. Even in science, the Socratic spirit quietly thrives. Researchers, educators, and thinkers often begin with questions rather than answers. They test, examine, and reflect, aware that certainty is rare and inquiry is endless. Socrates' insistence on questioning assumptions resonates with this modern pursuit of knowledge, showing that curiosity, humility, and persistence are timeless companions to discovery. In technology and ethics, Socratic questioning remains relevant. As society grapples with artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and climate change, asking thoughtful questions about morality, justice, and responsibility is essential. Socrates' gentle insistence on reflecting before acting reminds us to slow down, think carefully, and prioritize ethical considerations over convenience or speed. His influence may not always be named explicitly, but it permeates discussions where wisdom and careful reflection are needed most. There's also a subtle, almost poetic lesson in Socrates' humanity and humor. While deeply serious about life, ethics, and truth, he never lost a sense of lightness. His wit, gentle teasing, and playful questioning remind us that reflection need not be heavy or grim. Modern thinkers, educators, and writers continue to emulate this balance, teaching and learning seriously, but with warmth, humor, and patience. This combination of rigor and gentleness is part of why his legacy is so enduring. Across centuries and cultures, Socrates' influence has traveled far beyond Athens. From European philosophers to Asian scholars, from modern educators to everyday thinkers, his life demonstrates the value of quiet reflection, moral courage, and thoughtful dialogue. Even in the midst of chaos, distraction, or uncertainty, his teachings offer a pathway to calm, clarity, and meaningful living. Perhaps the most profound aspect of Socrates' legacy is its universality. Anyone, anywhere, can engage with his lessons. You do not need a formal classroom, a philosopher's library, or ancient texts. You need curiosity, reflection, and the willingness to ask questions. In this way, Socrates lives quietly in each of us who pause to consider life, virtue, and truth. His influence is subtle, pervasive, and deeply comforting, perfect for quiet contemplation, study, or even preparing the mind for sleep. So, as we drift toward the evening in our imagination, perhaps walking with Socrates through imagined streets of Athens or sitting in quiet reflection under a soft sky, we can feel his presence. He asks no grandiose questions today, no public debates, no accusatory trials. Instead, he gently invites us to ask, reflect, and live thoughtfully. His calm voice, though separated from us by centuries, still resonates softly. Examine your life, care for your soul, and seek the truth calmly and patiently. Even in our modern world of noise, rush, and distraction, Socrates remains a guide. He whispers across time to anyone willing to listen, to pause, and to reflect. Through him, the ancient streets of Athens continue to live in our imagination, carrying wisdom, humor, courage, and serenity across millennia. The questions he posed are still relevant. The calm he embodied is still inspiring. The gentle path he walked still beckons. And so, Socrates' legacy in modern thought is not just about philosophy books or classrooms. It is about how we live, how we think, and how we approach life with clarity, humor, and moral courage. In every quiet reflection, in every thoughtful question, in every calm acceptance of what we cannot control, his influence endures. The legacy of Socrates is, in essence, timeless. It is a whisper that reminds us to slow down, question deeply, and live thoughtfully, an eternal gift for minds willing to wander softly along the path of wisdom. Chapter 14: Socrates' Influence on Education and Daily Life. Even after centuries have passed, Socrates continues to shape the way we learn, reflect, and live. His life and teachings, though rooted in the busy streets and quiet corners of ancient Athens, resonate profoundly in modern education and everyday existence. The lessons of his calm inquiry, gentle questioning, and reflective thinking have quietly woven themselves into the fabric of our daily lives. Let's begin with education, a field where Socrates' influence is unmistakable. Schools, colleges, and even informal learning environments often employ what is called the Socratic method, a teaching style that emphasizes asking questions rather than giving direct answers. Imagine a classroom, silent except for a teacher's soft voice. "Why do you believe that?" Or, "Can you explain your reasoning?" Students pause, think, and respond, discovering gaps in their own understanding. This method nurtures critical thinking, self-reflection, and intellectual curiosity, the very qualities Socrates championed. Unlike rote memorization, which encourages repetition without understanding, the Socratic method invites learners to engage deeply, reflect honestly, and uncover the reasoning behind their beliefs. The charm of this method lies not just in its effectiveness but in its gentle rhythm. A question is posed softly, students ponder quietly, dialogue unfolds, and understanding grows naturally. In many ways, it is like a slow stroll through an olive grove on a warm afternoon, where each step reveals a new detail and every glance invites contemplation. Socrates' calm, patient style encourages learners to approach knowledge thoughtfully, without anxiety or haste. Beyond formal education, Socrates' influence extends into daily life. Anyone who pauses to ask meaningful questions, "Am I living rightly? What is truly important? Am I acting with integrity?" is, in a sense, practicing Socratic inquiry. These questions, gentle yet profound, guide decisions, foster self-awareness, and encourage calm reflection. In a world filled with constant noise, distraction, and urgency, the act of questioning oneself quietly is an invaluable tool for inner peace. Socrates' legacy here is subtle, yet transformative, reminding us that the path to understanding often begins within. Consider a modern parent guiding a child through small challenges. Instead of lecturing or imposing rules, they might ask softly, "What do you think is the right way to handle this?" Or, "How would you feel if the roles were reversed?" This gentle inquiry mirrors Socratic teaching. The child learns to reason, reflect, and take responsibility for their choices, internalizing lessons more effectively than through punishment or didactic instruction. Socratic principles thus extend naturally into nurturing, mentoring, and parenting, forms of education that shape not only knowledge but character. Socrates also influenced self-improvement and personal reflection. Journaling, meditation, and mindful contemplation can be seen as modern extensions of Socratic practice. When we pause at the end of the day to consider our actions, question our motives, and plan for better choices, we are following a path Socrates laid out millennia ago. Reflection is quiet, patient, and sometimes playful, much like Socrates' dialogues with his friends, calm, probing, and illuminating. The practice allows individuals to refine their thoughts, cultivate virtue, and live more thoughtfully, qualities that remain as relevant today as in ancient Athens. In workplaces, Socratic principles quietly shape leadership, collaboration, and decision-making. Managers and team leaders who ask guiding questions rather than dictating solutions create spaces where ideas grow, creativity flourishes, and individuals develop confidence in their reasoning. Meetings that use thoughtful questioning rather than dominating monologues echo Socratic dialogue, a calm exchange of ideas, exploration of possibilities, and nurturing of understanding. In these moments, Socrates' gentle approach to inquiry brings both efficiency and serenity to complex tasks. Even in social interactions, his influence is present. Consider conversations where one listens more than speaks, asks with curiosity rather than judgment, and encourages reflection rather than immediate reaction. This calm, thoughtful engagement fosters understanding, empathy, and meaningful connection, qualities Socrates exemplified in the busy streets of Athens. By practicing patience, active listening, and gentle questioning, modern individuals embody his timeless wisdom in small but profound ways. Socrates' impact on education is not confined to philosophy alone. Literature, history, science, and even mathematics benefit from his approach. Students learn to ask, why does this pattern exist? How does this principle relate to the broader world? What assumptions underlie this theory? Such questions cultivate curiosity, analytical thinking, and a lifelong love of learning. By encouraging learners to explore deeply rather than merely memorize, Socratic influence transforms education into an ongoing journey of discovery. In daily life, the Socratic mindset nurtures ethical awareness. Modern society is filled with moral dilemmas, from environmental concerns to social justice issues. By reflecting on our actions, questioning assumptions, and considering consequences, we practice a form of Socratic reasoning. The quiet reflection that Socrates championed allows individuals to navigate complex decisions calmly, thoughtfully, and with integrity. His legacy thus extends beyond philosophical theory. It actively shapes ethical living and responsible citizenship. Socrates also demonstrates the importance of humor, humility, and humanity in daily interactions. He approached conversations with gentle teasing, playful insights, and a calm demeanor, reminding us that wisdom need not be heavy or grim. In modern life, this principle encourages patience, empathy, and lightheartedness, even amid challenges. By blending seriousness with warmth, reflection with humor, we embody a holistic approach to learning and living, one that balances thoughtfulness with joy. Another remarkable aspect of Socratic influence is its accessibility. His teachings are not restricted to scholars, philosophers, or academics. Anyone willing to ask questions, reflect on life, and seek virtue can practice Socratic principles. This universality makes his legacy deeply democratic. Wisdom is not a privilege, but a practice available to all. In quiet moments of self-reflection, mindful interaction, or thoughtful discussion, the spirit of Socrates quietly persists, guiding hearts and minds with serenity and clarity. Even in moments of stress, uncertainty, or grief, Socratic influence provides guidance. By encouraging reflection rather than impulsive reaction, he teaches calm resilience. His method invites us to pause, observe, and consider before acting, cultivating patience, clarity, and moral grounding. This approach is particularly comforting in modern life, where constant information, fast decisions, and external pressures often overwhelm. Socratic calm reminds us that clarity comes from reflection, not haste. In literature and media, we see echoes of Socratic influence in characters who question, reflect, and guide others gently. Teachers, mentors, detectives, and even fictional philosophers embody his methods, blending inquiry with compassion. By observing these examples, audiences learn subtle lessons. Questioning is valuable, reflection is powerful, and calm understanding is transformative. Socrates' legacy, therefore, extends beyond texts. It lives in culture, art, and human imagination. At home, in schools, in offices, and in communities, Socratic principles encourage dialogue rather than argument, understanding rather than judgment, reflection rather than reaction. These practices create environments where learning, growth, and calm coexist, mirroring the gentle streets of Athens where Socrates once walked barefoot, pondering life and engaging thoughtfully with everyone around him. His influence, though quiet, is profound, touching the ways we teach, learn, live, and interact. And so, as evening falls over our imagined Athenian city, we can picture Socrates still walking softly through the streets, asking gentle questions, smiling knowingly, and guiding those willing to reflect. His presence is not limited to history books, it is alive in the quiet moments of thought, the soft dialogues of learning, and the gentle reflections that shape our actions. In classrooms, workplaces, homes, and hearts, Socratic influence continues to nurture curiosity, wisdom, and calm. Socrates' teachings remind us that education is not merely about information, but about thinking, questioning, and living with integrity. Daily life is not only about routines, but about reflection, ethical choices, and meaningful connection. His legacy provides a steady, serene framework, showing that even small, thoughtful actions, guided by reflection and reason, can ripple outward into the world. In modern life, we are often pulled in many directions, chasing speed, efficiency, and external approval. Socrates offers a gentle counterbalance. Slow down, ask questions, examine life, and cultivate virtue. In doing so, we not only learn but live more fully. In quiet classrooms, reflective moments, and thoughtful conversations, the spirit of Socrates thrives, offering calm wisdom in a busy world. Thus, the influence of Socrates on education and daily life is both profound and subtle. It guides how we teach, how we learn, how we reflect, and how we live. It nurtures curiosity, patience, moral courage, and calm inquiry. It blends seriousness with humor, depth with accessibility, and reflection with action. Across centuries, in countless forms, Socratic influence persists, quiet, gentle, and endlessly valuable. Chapter 15, Socrates' Eternal Calm. As the sun sets over Athens, painting the city in soft amber and deepening shadows, we come to the final reflections on Socrates' life and influence. In the quiet of our imagination, we can picture him walking slowly through the streets one last time, not hurried, not burdened, but calm, thoughtful, and serene. Though centuries have passed since those days, Socrates' calm presence continues to ripple across time, touching minds and hearts in ways both subtle and profound. Socrates' calm was not the absence of thought or feeling. It was a deliberate choice, a cultivated habit of serenity rooted in reflection, virtue, and wisdom. He faced uncertainty, injustice, and even death without panic or bitterness. In his gentle footsteps, we can sense a life that teaches us how to move gracefully through the world, observing, questioning, reflecting, and acting with integrity. This is the essence of his eternal calm, a gift that endures in thought, dialogue, and reflection. Consider the everyday application of this calm. In our own lives, we face challenges, pressures, and moments of uncertainty. Socrates' example reminds us that a composed mind is powerful. Calmness allows us to see clearly, to question wisely, and to respond with thoughtfulness rather than impulse. It teaches patience, the gentle acceptance of what cannot be controlled, and the courage to act when we can make a difference. This calm is not passive, it is active, reflective, and deeply empowering. Socrates' eternal calm also shaped his approach to teaching and conversation. He listened attentively, asked gently probing questions, and guided his friends with patience. Even in disagreement, he remained steady and composed. This approach transformed ordinary dialogues into profound lessons. His calm demeanor invited reflection rather than confrontation, curiosity rather than fear, and understanding rather than judgment. In classrooms today, in discussions among friends, or in personal contemplation, this same approach offers a model for how to communicate, learn, and engage thoughtfully. Even in his final moments, Socrates embodied this calm. The hemlock did not frighten him. His friends did not see anger or despair, only clarity, humor, and a deep acceptance of life's natural course. From these final moments, we learn that calm is not the absence of adversity but the ability to face it with wisdom and courage. It is a serenity grounded in understanding, reflection, and the pursuit of virtue, a calm that transcends time, culture, and circumstance. Socrates' calm was also deeply human. It was filled with humor, warmth, and gentle irony. He knew the imperfections of the world and the limitations of human understanding. Yet, instead of despairing, he chose patience, curiosity, and playful insight. This balance of seriousness and lightness is a hallmark of his eternal presence, reminding us that wisdom does not require solemnity alone. There is joy in reflection, subtle delight in questioning, and profound satisfaction in living thoughtfully. This calm continues to inspire modern philosophy. Thinkers who grapple with morality, existence, and knowledge often do so in the spirit of Socratic inquiry, patient, reflective, and methodical. Even when addressing complex problems, they pause, ask questions, and explore deeply. Socrates' model reminds us that thoughtfulness is not rushed, that reflection is a form of strength, and that patience fosters clarity. This eternal calm, embedded in the practice of philosophy, shows that wisdom is a gentle companion, present whenever we pause to listen. In education, his influence remains profound. Teachers who use the Socratic method cultivate a calm environment where students explore ideas without fear of judgment. Questions are posed softly, answers are considered carefully, and understanding grows naturally. This is a reflection of Socrates' approach, learning as a shared, reflective journey rather than a hurried pursuit of facts. The classroom becomes a place of serenity, inquiry, and thoughtful engagement, echoing the calm of ancient Athens. Socrates' calm also extends to the realm of ethics. In modern life, we face countless decisions that challenge our values, patience, and understanding. Socratic calm encourages us to pause, question assumptions, and act with integrity. By reflecting deeply before acting, we honor his legacy, allowing patience, reason, and moral clarity to guide us. The serenity he modeled teaches that the most meaningful decisions are made not in haste, but in quiet contemplation. Even in relationships, his calm is instructive. Listening attentively, speaking thoughtfully, and questioning with kindness are Socratic practices that foster understanding, empathy, and connection. Arguments transform into dialogues, conflict becomes exploration, and interaction becomes an opportunity for shared reflection. In this way, Socrates' eternal calm shapes not only minds but hearts, creating spaces of trust, learning, and gentle guidance. Socrates' influence on modern thought, education, and personal reflection converges into a single, enduring lesson. A life of calm reflection is a life of wisdom. By walking slowly through our own thoughts, questioning gently, and acting thoughtfully, we cultivate serenity that guides us through challenges, inspires others, and enriches our understanding of the world. This calm is not passive. It is active, deliberate, and deeply transformative. The eternal calm of Socrates also reminds us of the beauty of simplicity. He lived without luxury, without unnecessary distraction, and yet he cultivated a richness of mind and spirit that endures across millennia. In a modern world often overwhelmed by noise, complexity, and haste, this simplicity is a balm. It reminds us to focus on what matters: reflection, virtue, curiosity, and integrity. By embracing simplicity, we find space for thought, serenity, and growth. Even the concept of death, so often feared, is transformed by Socratic calm. He faced mortality without dread, viewing it as a natural part of life or possibly a transition to another form of existence. His acceptance provides a gentle lesson that fear often arises from misunderstanding and that reflection, preparation, and virtue can transform anxiety into serenity. Death, in Socratic terms, is not a punishment but a continuation of the journey, a final opportunity for calm insight. Socrates' eternal calm is not just about facing death, though. It is about facing life itself with poise, humor, and patience. Every question he asked, every dialogue he engaged in, every reflective pause he took, models a life lived with gentle intention. This calm is contagious. Those who encounter it, whether in ancient Athens or through modern texts, feel encouraged to slow down, reflect, and approach life with serenity and wisdom. Even in today's fast-paced world, we can invoke Socratic calm. A quiet moment with a book, a reflective walk in nature, a thoughtful conversation with a friend, these are modern avenues for the practice of his gentle philosophy. In these moments, we engage in Socratic inquiry, observing, questioning, reflecting, and growing. The rhythm is slow, soothing, and deliberate, much like a lullaby for the mind. And so, as we bring this journey to a close, we can imagine Socrates still present, softly guiding us. His presence is felt not in grand displays but in the subtle rhythms of thought, reflection, and ethical living. He encourages us to pause, breathe, and ask meaningful questions. He reminds us that calm inquiry is not weakness but a form of strength, that humor, patience, and gentle reflection can illuminate the darkest corners of thought, that integrity, curiosity, and virtue are treasures that endure beyond time and circumstance. In the quiet of our minds, we may picture Socrates walking slowly along the imagined streets of Athens, the warm sun on his shoulders, the soft breeze carrying the scent of olive trees and the distant sea. His sandals make no sound, yet his influence resonates across millennia. Each question he asks, each gentle nudge toward reflection, is a reminder that wisdom is not about certainty but about thoughtful exploration. His calm is eternal, a whisper across time that encourages us to live fully, reflect deeply, and embrace serenity. Socrates' eternal calm leaves us with a final, comforting thought. Life, in all its complexity and uncertainty, can be met with patience, reflection, and gentle humor. By adopting his approach, walking slowly through our days, questioning kindly, and acting with integrity, we honor his legacy. His life reminds us that true wisdom is not loud, forceful, or immediate. It is calm, patient, and enduring. In this gentle presence, we find a model for living, learning, and resting peacefully, night after night, year after year. And as our minds drift into quiet reflection, perhaps even toward sleep, we carry Socrates' eternal calm with us. His voice, soft yet clear, invites us to examine our lives, nurture our souls, and embrace a life of thoughtful serenity. Across centuries, across continents, across centuries, this calm endures, always present, always gentle, always guiding. Socrates has left the world, but his presence lingers, eternal, like the soft whisper of wind through the streets of Athens, like a quiet lullaby for every curious mind willing to listen.